Hey everybody, this is part 2 of my Power Apps tutorial for beginners. We're going to be talking about galleries, collections, and variables. They're used a ton in Power Apps, so hopefully this will be super helpful for you guys and shouldn't take too long. So let's get started. First off, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about collections, and we'll start out by putting on a button on the screen. And basically, to make a collection, you can start one by putting it on a button, or you can go to your screen and click on the on visible property and start one there too. Or if this is your main screen, you can put it on the on start property if you want that to. So here we go. So on the select, we're going to put collect. And then it's going to want to ask us for our name of our collection. So when you're starting your collection, you can name it whatever. Usually I start out with COL, and we'll put in people. Collection, people. I'm going to put a comma, separate that. Now it's going to ask me for an item, and so I can add as many items as I want. I can reference other controls, but to start that, you're going to do your curly bracket. You're going to say the name of the field. So for example, this is name, and then I can put the name of the person, like Red. I'm going to do another comma to separate that and do another field. Then I'm going to do, I don't know, age. I'll do 22, and I'll end my curly bracket, put another comma to close it out, and it's that simple. So I'm going to change this to collect real quick. So this is the collect function. So as soon as you can hit, if you hold down the Alt key, it'll kind of put your Power App into like the play mode without having to click this play button. So if I hold down the Alt key, hit collect, created that collection for me. So if I want to view my collections, I can hit view, collections, and there's Fred, and age is 22. So looking at that formula again, the name is the name of my field, age is another name of my field. I can add more. If I wanted to do another item, I could put another comma, put another curly bracket, and as you can see up there, it's just saying add another item. So I could just fill out something else using those curly brackets, and that's pretty much it. So let me show you how you can we'll use a data table to show your collection. So I go to insert, data table. Right now, items isn't set to anything, so if I want to reference my collection, I'm just going to say collection, people. My fields, I'm going to select age and name. Notice you can, these are different. You can change those and do all that. Yeah, you can even reorder that too. That's pretty cool. I usually don't use data tables very often. So, it's not showing anything in there, but let me try clicking that button again. There it goes. So it's going to say Fred 22. If I click collect, it's going to show Fred 22, collect Fred 22, collect Fred 22. So that's what the collection function does. So if I want it to do something different, I'm going to just copy that button real quick and use a different formula. And this one is going to be called clear collect. Clear collect. And actually, before I do that, so this isn't so complicated, I'm going to throw another button in there and first call this one clear. Okay, so I got my collect button, which you guys saw, clear button, and clear collect. So the clear button, what I'm going to do with this is, if you can't tell, use my clear function. So the clear function is going to clear, just asking you for one thing, collection. So the only collection I have is my people collection. Select collection people, close parentheses. Now when I hit play, I'm going to click my clear button, clears out my entire collection. So the clear collect is basically a combination of the two. So if I hit clear collect, name Fred age 22, I'm going to go in here. It's doing the exact same thing as my collect function. I just added the clear in front of the collect. So when I click it, it's going to add Fred 22. Click it again. Can't really tell, but it's clearing out the collection and just adding the one item in there. So if you ever need to do that, usually you can use clear collect. So let's see, I can do these, add a bunch, hit clear collect, takes me back to just one, clear that, add one, however I want to do that. So that's a basic understanding of collections. So another thing that you can do with collections, and that is really super helpful, this is a good advice that I got a while ago that really sped up my apps, is with collections you can collect from a data source. So if I add in a data source, I'm going to go to view, add my data source. I'll speed this up for you guys. Alright, so I added a SharePoint list, just a little demo list called food. And what I can do, let me throw on yet another button. Call this collect, and I'm going to clear collect. Usually I use clear collect when I'm getting data from a data source because you don't want any duplicate data because you're going back from a list, and to have two of those would be two items, or doubling it or whatever using the collect button is kind of weird. So I usually use clear collect. And notice I can do clear collect on my old collection, or I can gather food. But first off, I'm still going to name it. So usually I'll do my COL and then the name of my SharePoint list or data source. And then for the item, this is where you can put in food. Not literal food, but that's fine. So now if I go to my data table, and let me just collect that real quick. So I'm going to collect from the data source. It's going to take a little bit longer. Go to my data table. Now I have food, collection food, and collection people. So normally on your apps, if you're just showing data, like on a data table, in a gallery, wherever you're just showing data, you're not going to really do anything with it. It's super helpful to just use a collection that shows the same information as your data source, but it's much quicker because collections, Power Apps deals with collections way faster. It doesn't have to go back to a SharePoint list. It's just right on the app, and it really speeds things up like a ton. Yeah, so don't miss out on that one. So if I click on collection food, go to my fields, more fields, title, type. We'll see how the image comes in. It doesn't come in very good. That doesn't come in very good. Huh. Well, I'll just do created. There we go. So there you go. I think that's about it for collections. Now let's move on to variables. So variables, sort of similar to a collection, probably more understandable. For that, I'm going to actually create a new screen so it's a little easier for you guys. And buttons, just like variables just like collections, need to be started the same way. You gotta click a button, you gotta do on start, on visible of a screen. Whenever you view a screen, the on visible will set a variable to whatever you want. So I can insert, for example, a text input box and a button. Now there's two different types of variables. The first one is called update context. There's two different functions for different variables. So this update context is going to be sort of like a collection format. You're going to do the update context. It's going to ask you for context. You can do your curly bracket, and you can call the name of your variable. I'm going to call this var text. Then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to set my variable to whatever you type in into the text input. So I'll reference my text input. So it's going to be text input 1 dot text, and the curly bracket and parentheses. So this is my first little variable. Call this, then click the button, sets the variable. Something that's super helpful when you're troubleshooting or just trying to figure out things on Power Apps is to throw a label on there and reference it to something. So I'll call this var. The text of my label is going to be var text, and it's been. Play, 2. Now it's been 2. So the thing to remember with this update context, I know that doesn't really show a good purpose of it, so I'll show that to you guys in just a sec. But with the update context variable, this variable is only going to be able to be used in this one screen. So this variable, I can't go back to my first screen, and I can't even use it on here. That's when you use the update context variable. If I use the set function, that's going to set a global variable, and its format is a little different. So if I use a set function, it's going to say my variable, my value. This time you don't have to use curly brackets. You can use var text 2. Then you're going to just do a comma and its value. Text input 1 dot text and end parentheses. So I'll just var text 2. Same thing. Click here. Then 2. Now if I go over here, throw a label on it. Whoa. Now I can reference it. So there, text 2. So now that global variable can be used throughout the whole app, and it just depends on what you're using it for. If the variable is just for that screen, you can just use it for that screen. Lots of times people will use the variable on the onVisible property of a screen. On onVisible, set a variable. You can set it to the user's name and use that later on. Another thing that you can use it for is for the ID, and this is a pretty useful tip. So we're going to go back to our collections, and we're going to insert yet another button. Normally you don't have as many buttons. Normally you do something like this with the onVisible property, but we're going to go here, and I'm just going to copy that same variable function. A little easier. Not much, but set variable. Alright. Paste on here. The nice thing I can do with these is I can set a variable to itself, and then add something to it. So I've already set this variable. What I want to do is I'm going to make its value, when I click this, I'm going to make its value be something different. So I'm going to set its value to what it already is, and then I'm going to add, let's see, 100 or something like that. Vertex 2 million. Alright, so let me set it to number. We're going to set it to 0. So the idea with this is I'm going to use this as the ID for when you're using an ID with a collection. So I'm going to set the variable, set it to 0. So I'm going to hit play. You'll need to click play, and if you're testing it, you got to click play and set the variable, otherwise you can't really reference it until it's been set. So now I have my variable set to, go to view, variables. Now my global variables, I have my text2, which is a text value. It's not set to anything now, and I have my number, it's set to 0. So I go back. Now what I want to do is I'm going to collect, and my same collect function, except for this time I'm going to add one more field. So I'm going to call this the ID. I'm going to make this ID equal my variable number. So now, let me change this data table to collection people again. I already caught my ID field on there now. That's kind of cool. And down first. ID is 0 right now, or not anything, so I'm just everything right now. So what I can do is I can go, there's different ways to do this. This is one way. Every time, and you'd probably want to use a update context or a local variable on this one, but we'll do it like this. So I'm going to set my number variable to itself plus 1, and I'll explain everything right after this. So first off, what it's going to do, whenever I click the collect button, it's going to set my variable to whatever it is. Right now it's 0. It's going to add 1. Then I put this semicolon to run another function. I'm going to collect my collection people, name, age, and the ID is going to be that number, so for that variable. So when I set the variable to var number, it's going to be 0 plus 1. In other words, it's going to be 1. So my ID is going to be 1. So when I click it again, now the variable is 1. It's going to add another 1. And when it collects it, the variable is going to be now equal to 2. Hopefully that makes sense. I think it'll make more sense when I do the play. So first off, I'm going to clear it. Now I'm going to collect, and collect, and collect, and collect. So now that variable is getting added 1 every single time. So the ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just keep going. So that's one way to use variables. You can use them in lots of different ways, but that is just to get you guys started, and I don't want to spend too much more time on this video. But now, lastly, I'll show you galleries, and they are a little bit more simpler than these, a little bit more simple than these. But let's go back to our screen 2, and I'll insert a gallery. So we have blank, or these are kind of have a pre-filled in. There's some controls inside of them a little bit. You also have the options of doing flexible heights, and those come in handy a lot. I'm just going to use a normal one. I'll probably do a video on how to use those later on. But let's do my gallery. It's going to bring you this data. I'm going to select, let's see, let me just change my items in the gallery. So obviously it's going to come up with this over here. The items is going to be the data or the information that the gallery is looking at. I'm going to use my collection people. So obviously all mine are the same, but in a gallery, they're super confusing to me at first because I wondered like how can you change this bottom one or whatever, but you have to change your data to change any of the other items. But what you can do is, I'm going to first get rid of that real quick. It's going to mess up some things. And these are just referencing each other, whatever they're doing. I just kind of, sometimes this is why I like using the blank gallery. Okay, there we go. So the real thing that you can kind of manipulate is, this is what's called a template. So you have your template size, and this is how big this little thing in here is. So you can make it bigger, smaller, makes them all bigger, smaller. And what you can do is you go to insert, add in a label, you can add in an image, you can even add in another gallery inside the gallery. That'll be for another video too. But for this one we're just going to add in a label, and it's referencing this item dot name. So the text value of this label is always, whenever you're putting something in a gallery, you're always going to reference it as, if you want to reference the data inside the gallery, you want to start by saying this item dot age or ID or a field in your data table or your data. So Fred is 22. I can paste another. I can add in another label. Another thing that you'll have to remember is you have to be clicking inside the gallery. If you don't see, when you add something new, if you don't see a duplicate going down the whole gallery, you did something wrong. Because you can easily click outside the gallery, hit label, and it's not going to be duplicated. So you have to make sure you're clicked inside this gallery. So let's change that to ID. And another thing to make galleries or items different when you're using them, like to differentiate the items in there, is these are kind of hard to differentiate. The only thing that's different is the ID. So what I can do is I can go to the text value, make the font a little bit bigger, and let's say I wanted to make these numbers a different color if they're a certain number. So if I want to do this, this isn't like a real scenario, but if I wanted to change anything, this is how you kind of can go about doing it. So I'll go to my color property and get rid of that. So while I'm selecting my label, I can say if this item ID is greater than 1. Now I'm going to hit comma and I'm going to put in my color that I want. So PowerUp is kind of cool. It has some built-in colors, so I can say black or white or whatever I want. So if it is greater than 1, I'll say black. If not, I'll say Alice blue. Never seen that one before. So if it's greater than 1, it's black. It's not, it's Alice blue. So let me change that to 2, so a little bit more. These are different. That's a terrible color. Let's do. Alright. Green, a little bit different. So that kind of can differentiate your items if you want them to show different things, make them a little bit different than each other. It's kind of confusing at the beginning, but basically you're just thinking, okay, if I can put this function in there, and every time this label is going to be the same for every single item in there. But if you do an if statement, it's just going to look at this item, and it's going to look at this the item for each row in your table. So if the ID in here, it's obviously less than 2, so since it's less than 2, it's false and it's going to be green. So that's not, a real scenario, but kind of get the gist of that. So the last thing I'm going to show you is how to filter galleries based on other galleries. And this is also it's super helpful and used a ton as well. So we're going to go to our gallery, vertical, and actually I'm just going to copy this gallery. Control C, paste, same exact gallery over here, except for this time, get rid of these guys. This time, what I'm going to do is in my items, I'm going to filter it based on what's selected in here. So, it's kind of hard to, filter this, so when there's only threads in there, but filter. Now the filter function is going to first ask you for a source, and the source is going to be your data or a table. You're going to hit comma, and the logical test is going to be a function. It's going to kind of look at all the different, it's kind of like an if statement. It's going to look at all the different items in there, and if it doesn't meet that criteria, it's not going to include it in the filter. So I'm going to say filter collection people based on, now since I'm wanting to filter this based on this gallery and the item that I'm selecting in this gallery, to do that you're going to do gallery 1, which is this gallery. It's going to highlight it in green. Dot selected. Now it can't do multiple selections, you can only select one at a time. Then you're going to go one step further. So now when you hit selected, it's going to bring up all the different things in the template that I can look at, or in the item that I'm selecting. So it can say my age, ID, label, all the different labels and what's in there. I can reference, the color of the labels. I can reference anything inside this template that I've selected, whichever one I'm selecting. So I'm going to do filter this gallery.selected.id. I'm just going to say equals, and now it's going to give me a few different options. I'm going to say ID. So obviously there's just going to be one in there right now because there's only one of each ID. But let's say I wanted to just show Fred with ID 2. I can click here, click on this one, it's going to filter this one. Click on this one, it's going to filter this one, and it's that simple. So obviously that wasn't like a great example on that one, but the basic idea is there. You can filter your next gallery based on what you've selected in this gallery, and you just got to match up the different fields in there. You can also use the in function, or the in, and that'll is more used for like text values. So you could say maybe you got a list of all these different people, and you just want to filter the first name is in the names of this table, or if that makes sense. So you can use the in. Right now I just use the equals, and that's it. So if you guys, it's kind of a longer video today, but if you guys have any questions, anything you want me to kind of go over, something complicated or simple, just leave me a comment and I can hopefully make a video on that. I love making videos, so just let me know. So thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.